Hello, everyone. Our topic for today is Chag HaShavuot, which is coming, of course, this week at Thursday night. And interestingly enough, there are many places who are doing online early Shavuot talks because of the closures or the partial closures like here. So around the world, this has been happening. Tuesday night, I think the Tel Aviv synagogue, Wednesday night, in many other synagogues from before Shavuot. This year also, Shavuot is usually a holiday of 1 day in Israel and 2 days abroad, but you might say everybody's having 2 days because we have Friday and Shabbat, so that sort of like equals it out among everyone. What I would like to talk about today is Shavuot and the writings of Hassidic writers, the ones that I've mentioned before. Rabbi Tzvi Elimelech Dinov, whose book B'nai Sachar is quite a popular Hasidic book on the holidays in the Jewish calendar. And after that, I'll read one passage also from the Rebbe of Gur, from Sfat Emet, also a book I have used in the past. Now, Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov, in his B'nai Sachar, he always starts off his discussion of every month with a quote from the Book of Formation, Sefer Yetzirah. And the Book of Formation describes every month of the calendar and how it's connected to the part of the body, to an astrological sign, etc. He says, Tziruf Havaya Shel HaChodesh Hazeh, which means the name of God which is attributed to this month. What does that mean? The main name of God in Hebrew is Yud, then Hey, then Vav, then Hey, what we call the Shem Havaya. Since there are 4 letters, normally if you have 4 letters, all the sum combinations of 4 letters or 4 numbers is usually 24. But in God's name of Shem Havaya, you have the Hey twice. So it's 24 divided by 2, so actually there are 12 possibilities. So every month there is a different way of writing it, and the month of Nisan, of course, which is the first month, is the regular way, Yud, Ke, Vav, Ke. And then the month of Sivan is Yud, Vav, Hey, Hey. Then he goes on and he says, in the book of Yetzirah, the letter which is attributed to this month is the letter Zayin, and it has to do with walking. And it's connected to Sagittarius, to Teomim, the twins in the world, and Sivan in the calendar, and the left leg in the human body. So he's going to have a few interpretations here. One of them, he says, why the Od Zayin, because Moses is 7 generations since Abraham, and in Gematria, Zayin, of course, is 7. But he has an interesting discussion on why it has to do with walking and why specifically the left leg. Now, if you've been following what I said a few weeks ago when we discussed Pesach, in Sefer Yetzirah, in his edition, Nisan has to do with the right leg. And he interpreted, why does the Passover holiday, which falls in Nisan, have to do with the right leg? Because God passed over the houses of the Israelites on the plague of the slaying of the firstborn, and slay the firstborn of the Egyptians. So passing over, he said, is like jumping. You jump with your strong leg, which is your right leg. So he says it's called the right leg because God jumps over the houses of the Israelites on the night of really it was the night of Pesach, of the first Pesach, the night of the slaying the firstborn. But then he says, why does the left leg then associate with the festival of Shavuot? V'hinei hayotzer kol mibreshit, b'oto od shebara chodesh Nisan bara regel yamin. He says, we have already learned that when God created the month of Nisan, he created with the right foot, which has to do with psicha, passing over and jumping, as we said about Passover. V'hu diluk kishlo seder hamadriga. On the right leg, jumping on the right leg means jumping in a way which you can pass over many things. In other words, it's not a gradual movement, it's a jerky, spontaneous movement which could push you forward. Because what happened on Passover was not something which was the normal, natural way of things. When God took us out of Egypt, He took us out, not only do we not have the merit to leave Egypt, because the Jewish people were so influenced by Egyptian culture that they had actually lost a lot of their religious and spiritual identity. God had to sort of like pull us out of Egypt in order to save us, because according to the Midrash, we had descended to the 49 levels of impurity. God had to pull us out before it would have been too late. So this happened, of course, Shelo Kaseder Madriga. This happened in an instantaneous way. And that's why it says, Ki b'chipazon yatzat Mitzrayim. You left in haste from Egypt. Ki lo na'aseh pula yedei ma'aseinu, because it did not happen based on our merit in our acts, in our deeds. Ak b'chipazon, only in haste. Ubato ot shebarach chodesh Sivan bara regel smol b'nefesh shimuchad lehilug. And therefore, the left leg represents the shavuot, because the left leg is the normal way of walking when you have the right and the left leg. If you only have the right leg, you have to jump. If you have the right leg and the left leg, you can walk in a normal fashion. K'inyan ha'naseh b'sivan al-yedei kabbalat hamochin, v'hi shtalmut shiur komatenu b'halicha yom achar yom kanoda v'azu halicha kaseder k'shnei raglayim. What does this mean? The Ari writes in Sha'ar HaKavanot that on the night of Passover, that first night of the Seder, there's a special light that comes into the world, because all the holidays, remember, are sort of like going around seasonally in a cycle. So when we come back to the spring season again every year, we are connecting in a way to that first spring season, which happened in Pesach Mitzrayim some 3,500 years ago. See, history is sort of like a slil. It's sort of like, not exactly a cycle, but let's say a coil. So on the one hand, seasonally, the years come back to the same spot, but on the other hand, we are going forward. So it's like a coil. Now, as the coil is going forward, there's still a connection when you're at this point to the point that was earlier in the coil. It's still closer than from the other side of the coil. So, in the same vein then, when we are coming back to the time of Pesach, we are still connected in a sense to this light that comes into the world every 15th of Nisan. And what it does is it gives us the ability to push ourselves forward, to rocket ourselves forward in a burst of energy. That's called the first night of Passover, and that's why it's called in our tradition Lel Shimurim, as it says in the Torah, a protected night. We are protected from all different type of evils, whether within our own hearts or the ones surrounding us. And these are the nights where we have the ability to reach a very high level. However, from the second day of Passover, the Ari says, we fall down from this pedestal and we have to rebuild ourselves by our own actions and our own motivation. And this is the days of the Omer, where we're counting 1 day, 2 days, up to 49 days, when we're lifting ourselves out of the 49 levels of impurity in order to attain the festival of Shavuot. So in that sense, what happens on the first day of Pesach is this jump, is this divine propelled or rocket propelled jump that God helped us. Ki le'olam chasto, we say in the Hallel, the Hallel Gadol, which is in the Psalms, that God took us out of Egypt because His loving kindness is everlasting. So it was not because of our merit, but God sort of pushed us out of Egypt. But in those 49 days before receiving the Torah, we have to now catch up by our own accord and by our own actions, and this is called walking naturally. Rabbi Kook writes in his Orot HaTshuvah that when it comes to the time of Tshuvah, there are two possibilities. Some people have spontaneous teshuvah, which means some personal, let's say, I would call it almost like mental earthquake or inner earthquake, which happens in their lives, propels them into a direction where they want a real life change. It could be a negative trauma of something terrible or an accident or a near-death experience, etc., whether by accident or by some type of malady. And it could also be a positive experience, maybe coming to Israel the first time and being next to the Western Wall. And these things sometimes create a little quake within our souls where we start thinking maybe there's something else, maybe there are other possibilities. So sometimes when this happens, it propels a person forward and they want to make changes in their lives, but these are very quick changes. And when a person does changes which are too quick, as we say in English, easy come, easy go, it's easy to fall. As it says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, tafasta merube lo tafasta, if you grab a lot, you're not really grabbing. Tafasta mu'at tafasta, but if you grab a little, there is a chance that that will continue. I remember years ago, there was a young kid, he was just bar mitzvah, just after his bar mitzvah at the age of 13. He decided he wanted to become more religious. And so he was driving his parents crazy about switching dishes, making milk and meat, and all these different things in the house. And his parents called me and said, "Can you speak to him? We don't know what to do." I said, "Fine." So I said to him, "How you doing?" Whatever. So I said, "Where are you holding?" He says, "I'm keeping kosher, I'm keeping Shabbat, I'm putting on tefillin, I'm doing this, I'm doing that." I said, "Yes, and how long have you been doing this?" He says, "About a month." Says, "Are you doing everything?" He says, "Everything I can do." I said to him, "Look, your family is not 100% religious. Let me put it that way. You're not yet living in a religious environment. May I make a suggestion?" He said, "What's the suggestion?" I said, "Maybe take it slowly. If you're keeping kosher, that's great. Shabbat, instead of jumping in, do things slowly. Start putting on tefillin. Once you feel like you got the tefillin, then do part of the davening in the morning, maybe the Amidah. Once you got that, go to the next step. Shabbat too, take the first step, start going to synagogue. The second step, maybe lighting candles. The third step, do things gradually, because you might lose it." He looks at me and says, "You're the first person who ever said that to me." I said, "Okay, somebody should say it." Anyhow, I went back to Israel. This was in Montreal. Came back about a half a year later, asked his parents what's going on. They said, he left everything. That's just human nature. If we don't take things gradually, if we don't give them time to become part of our psyche, it's difficult for the body to engage with them. We need to make changes slowly. Life sometimes pushes changes upon us which were unexpected, and then we have to adapt. But that is not natural to the human being. It could take us a long time to years later to adapt, but that's when you're forced. When you're trying to take upon yourself a situation, you have to propel yourself according to your ability to receive and to accommodate to that new situation. So when you do tshuva spontaneously, says Rav Kook, he calls tshuva pitomit, there's always the danger you might fall back. He says the second time is tshuva hadragatit, returning slowly, step by step. And in the step-by-step return, there's more of a chance that whatever you have incorporated within your life will stay. This is the difference between Pesach and Shavuot. In Pesach, we have this amazing rocket-propelled burst of spiritual energy on that Seder night, according to the Ari. But after that, to reach Shavuot, we have to start the work. We have to roll up our sleeves and do the work, and we have to work on ourselves for the 49 days. There are many people who have the custom that during the counting of the Omer, because there are 7 weeks, and the 7 weeks represent the 7 Kabbalistic Sefirot, which are understood from a Hassidic point of view also within the human soul as attributes, as love, fear, and compassion, to try to work on these attributes of the soul every day as we're working towards the receiving of the Torah. So that's why he says that Passover then is the right leg, which is the ability to jump when you have one leg, but 2 legs are walking naturally. That's taking things step by step in order to receive the Torah. Because what happened in Sivan, he says, Kenyan hanasa b'Sivan ya kabbalat hamochin v'ishtalmut shiur komotenu b'halicha yom achar yom. Because we receive these new insights on Shavuot by walking naturally day after day, which means gradually, on 2 legs, as we said before. So, and therefore the Torah says, B'chodesh hashlishi bayom hazeh daika ba'u midbar Sinai. Kunyan shkatavti gamken hanhu tre'at vanzeh henhema shenivra behem chodshei hashana Nisan. Oh, he says also, the Torah says, bayom hazeh, on this day did they come to Sinai. It says, why in Hebrew does it say zeh, zayin and hey? Because these are the 2 letters that, according to Sefer Yetzirah, represent the months of Nisan and Sivan. The Hey, which is Nisan, and the Zayin, which is Sivan, which is the right leg and the left leg, according to the book of formation, the book of Yetzirah. And then, of course, he always writes at the end of his little discussion, Vehavein, which means, and understand this. So that was the first idea he had, which I thought was a very interesting idea of the day. Now, there's one other thing here he had, which I wanted to read to you, and it's just a very short paragraph on Shavuot, again in the book Bnei Sachar, which is right at the beginning. This is Tzadi Hei Amud Beit, where he says Ma'alat HaChag, where he talks about the meaning of the day. Chag HaShavuot, the festival of Shavuot, Lo nitle b'Torah bizman. It is the only holiday which is not contingent on a date on the calendar. Rosh Hashanah is the 1st of Tishrei, it says in the Torah. Yom Kippur is the 10th. Sukkot is the 15th. And then, of course, Passover is the 15th. But he says Shavuot is the only one where it doesn't actually give a date. The truth is, it's not actually the only one, because Shmini Atzeret also doesn't have a date. It says when you count 8 days after Sukkot, you have Shmini Atzeret, meaning it's called the 8th day of Sukkot in a sense. So it also doesn't have a calendar date, but since it's right next to Sukkot, it's really easy to figure out. But anyhow, so Shavuot, the interesting part about it, it doesn't have an official date of the month, you just count. And he's actually right, it doesn't have a date, because Shmini Atzeret will always come out the day after Sukkot. But Shavuot, by counting 49 days, in the times, in temple times, when the new moon was actually decided by testimony, so the new moon could either be 29 or 30 days, theoretically Shavuot could fall on a different day by a discrepancy of 1 day every calendar year, depending on when, if Nisan was 29 or 30 days. So in that sense, he's right. Ever since we established the calendar, just after the time of Yudah Nasi, in the time of his son, so Hillel, so this calendar which was established puts Sivan always, the 6th of Sivan is the day of Shavuot. But in theory, it could have been that Shavuot, the 49 days, would fall on, theoretically, as I said, a different date. So why is it that Shavuot is then contingent on our counting and not on a date in the calendar? Of course, this idea is that the Torah is not contingent on time. It's above time. And therefore, we cannot give it a date in the calendar, receiving the Torah. It's something you have to struggle towards. It has to do with our counting. It has to do with human initiative. When we hit the 50th day in our counting, that's the holiday. And he says, what is the reason? He says, look, we were given the mitzvah to study Torah. And it says in the book of Joshua, Vagita bo yom v'layla, you shall read it day and night. V'lamati tama tzivui mitorato sharav balagur aryeh. And I have a meaning for this, a reason for this, from the Maharal of Prague, in his book Gur Aryeh. Katav in the Netivot, Liota Torah l'mal min hazman. Since the Torah is infinite, it's above time. Therefore, there cannot, because after all, there is no specific time to study Torah. It's day and night, which means it's timeless. It's not contingent at all on time. That's why it says you study it day and night. And actually, this is not even in the proper order, because if you remember in the Genesis story, the days say it was night, it was day. And about Torah study, it says it was day, you study in the day and the night. It's the exact opposite of the order in Genesis. Because the world was created first with the night and then with the day. Laila kodem liyom. The night comes before the day. But the Torah is not only above time, it's actually very different than time. And therefore it says, you have the day and you have the night. And therefore we have to say also that Moses did not make the receiving of the Torah contingent on time, on any specific day in the month, which would make it temporal. But he said that you have to count 50 days. And of course, 50 in our tradition represents something which is above time. Right? In general, in the Kabbalistic tradition, the 7 lower sefirot, or divine emanations, are the emanations that control the natural world. That's why there's 7 days in a week. And that's called 7 times 7, which is 49. And 50 represents one step above the natural world in our tradition. It says that Moses was the only one who was able to reach the 50th level, which means the ability to prophetically look above the natural order of things, being the highest of prophets. So here again we have another idea of the festival of Shavuot, which represents the giving of the Torah, being a festival above time. Now, there's one other idea which is directly connected to this, and the Sfat Emet, and this will be our third idea and final idea for today. So Sfat Emet writes on Shavuot, in his volume on Bamidbar, he calls it the first day of Shavuot, and this is Tafresh Lamed Aleph. Shavuot is also called the day of Bikurim, of bringing the first fruit. And he says, because God created the world through the Torah. Now this is an idea which we find both in the Midrash, which says that God created the universe. The Torah was a blueprint for the universe. Histakel b'Torah ubarat ha'olam. God looked in the Torah and created the universe. So the Torah becomes the blueprint of the universe. Now, and the Zohar says the same thing. God creates the universe through the Torah. Nimtza chiyut pnimiyut shekol hanivraim ukoach hareshit shel haTorah. That means that the vitality of everything in nature actually comes from the Torah. And it comes from the Reshit, which means this first beginning. If the Torah is beginning of everything, so the Torah is the Reshit. And that's why the Torah starts Be-Reshit, through the beginning. And if you know Rashi says the beginning here refers actually to the Torah itself and to the Jewish people. Bishvil Torah shenikret Rishit. The Torah is called the beginning. Why is it the beginning? Because God looks into the Torah, creates the universe. Ki nivra liot ne'elam ha'pnimiyut, אבל ביום מתן תורה נתגלה זה, ונדבק הכל בשורש. Which means, in general, the Torah is the beginning of existence, he says, but it's the hidden beginning of existence. But on the day of Shavuot, again, when nature spins around and the cycles return to the point that they were before, you can sort of sense those beginnings. So on this day of Matan Torah, it's revealed a little bit, the beginnings. And that's what it says at Sinai, face to face did God speak with you. And as it says, Mikol dibur nimale olam b'shamayim. V'chen katuv nechlak l'shivim l'shonot. Shad nitgala v'nimshach chiyut ha'torah l'kol ha'nivraim. Because just as originally, at Sinai, that moment of interface between God and the Jewish people is this interface with the beginning of all, so too when we come to the Shavuot holiday, it's the interface with the beginning of all. And another way to see it is because we get 10 commandments, and the only other 10 we find in the Torah are the 10 utterances through which God created the universe. Actually, there's also the Makot. But this idea of God creates the universe through 10 utterances, as the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, chapter 5, where he says, and God said, let there be light, let there be a firmament, let there be, And then he gives the Torah through 10 utterances of the Decalogue, to say that this is again a moment of new beginnings. Just like, in fact, there's a midrash of the Otiot of Rabbi Akiva, letters of Rabbi Akiva, a midrash which came out in the first time, the time of the Geonim in Babylonia, but the names, of course, are all names of Tanaim. The midrash says that all the letters came before God and wanted to convince God to create the universe through them. The Taf came, and then the Shin, etc. And it went all the way down. Each time God found a reason why no. Shin is Shmirah, which means to watch, but it's also Sheker, which means lies. Wrong letter. Etc., etc. And then it came all the way to the Beit, and the Beit said, I'm bracha. I'm blessing. And God said, Baruch haba. Okay, come with blessing. And he creates the Torah with Beit, which means he creates the universe with Beit. This is the way the midrash of the letters of Rabbi Akiva understood it. And then the story goes on that the Aleph says, I didn't get a chance to say anything. God says to the Aleph, don't worry. It's true I'm giving the Torah with Beit, but when I'm going to give the Torah to the Jewish people, it's going to be with an Aleph, because the Decalogue starts, Anochi Hashem Elohecha, I am the Lord your God, which starts with the Aleph. So don't worry about that. So, again, we have this idea of the 10 Commandments are the Aleph, and the beginning of the universe is the Beit, which is also, as we said in that verse, Bayom hazeh ba'u midbar Sinai. We said Zeh, Zayin, Hey are the 2 months, but also Ba'u from the word Ba is the Beit and the Aleph, which represent how the universe was created with the Beit, and the Aleph is the giving of the Torah. Vikar Kabbalat HaTorah Yitgalut, וזה שכתוב בתרגום, וירד השם על הר סיני, קדוש ברוך הוא מעלה כל הארץ כבודו, רק מקודם היה נסתר, לכן נקרא יום הביקורים, שנדבק עתה הכל בבחינת ראשית ונתחדש. I don't want to read the whole thing, I just want to summarize what he is saying at this point. What he's really saying here is, Matan Torah. Remember, in the agricultural year, Shavuot is the harvest festival. It's actually not mentioned in the Torah, the giving of the Torah at all. It's something that we have in tradition. And our tradition is that it happens on the 6th of Sivan. And when you count 50 days on our calendar from the second day of Passover, it actually comes out on the 6th of Sivan. So it's the rabbis of the Talmud who explain to us that it's actually that day of Matan Torah. So Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, is really a hidden mystery, because the Torah itself doesn't tell us when the Torah was given. So that day of Shavuot, which is the day of the harvest, also has a secret. And its secret is Matan Torah. Just we're so used to that secret that we actually call the day Matan Toratenu, and we forget about the Bikurim, we forget about the harvest and the first fruit of the agricultural system. But we have to remember that it's actually a secret. The Torah came from beyond time, and that's why it doesn't have a date. When the Talmud spilled the beans and told us this is the day of the giving of the Torah, it also means that this day, which was hidden from the calendar, is a day that you can actually reconnect with that moment of the beginning. Both the beginning of the universe, because God looks in the Torah to create the world, and of course the interface between God and the Jewish people, which, as he says here, is the moment of the giving of the Torah. It's not when the tablets are given to the Jewish people. It's not when, actually, on that day of the 6th of Sivan is when God said the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, to the Jewish people. But is this interface, this revelation at Sinai, which is called the giving of Torah, because the whole point of the Torah is in order to make this connection between the Jewish people and God. This is what's special about our whole relationship and our whole receiving of the Torah. So we've come a little bit here, and to put it all together, first the Bnei Issachar told us that we receive this special influx of spiritual energy on Passover night, but we have to earn it when it comes to Shavuot. And Bnei Issachar says that also on Shavuot, we have this primordial moment where this hidden information that the Torah was given on this night is a moment in time when the seasons spiral back to that same mode, and we have to try to reach in within ourselves in order to find that feeling of primordial experience of beginnings again, so that we can re-begin, so we can connect to the beginning of the universe and receive the Torah as a guide light in our lives. I wish everybody, of course, Chag Sameach, Shalom Shalom.